Welcome, everyone. This is not a story about money. It is not a story about luck. And it is not a story about overnight success. This is a story about a quiet decision, made long before headlines, long before stock prices, long before the world learned the name Jeff Bezos. Every great transformation begins with a moment most people never notice. A moment when comfort whispers, "Stay," and curiosity dares you to leave. In the mid-1990s, while the internet was still a fragile idea and most people barely trusted email, one man chose uncertainty over security, not because he was fearless, but because he understood something rare. Regret is heavier than failure. Today, we explore how that single decision grew into Amazon. Not from privilege, not from perfection, but from clarity, patience, and relentless long-term thinking. Listen closely, because this story is not just about building a company. It is about building a mindset. Part 1. The moment most people walk away. In 1994, Jeff Bezos had what many would call a perfect life. He was young, brilliant, and working on Wall Street at a prestigious hedge fund. His career path was clear, his future was predictable, and his income was secure. For most people, this is where ambition rests. But for Bezos, this was where discomfort began. While researching the internet for work, he came across a statistic that would quietly change his life. Internet usage was growing at over 2,000% per year. To others, it was an interesting number. To Bezos, it was a signal. Not an idea yet. Not a business plan. Just a question that refused to let go. What kind of company could exist inside that growth? Bezos didn't rush. He didn't quit the next day. Instead, he built what he later called a regret minimization framework. He imagined himself at age 80, looking back on his life. And he asked one simple question: which decision would I regret more? Trying and failing, or never trying at all? The answer was immediate. Failure would hurt, but regret would haunt. So he did something most people never do. He walked away from certainty. Not with arrogance, but with humility. He told his boss, he explained his idea. And in a moment that would later feel almost symbolic, his boss told him, "This sounds like a good idea, but it would be even better for someone who didn't already have a great job." Bezos took that as confirmation. He packed his life into a car with his wife, Mackenzie, and they drove across the country, from New York to Seattle. Not because Seattle was glamorous, but because it was close to a talent pool, shipping infrastructure, and fewer competitors. This detail matters, because from the very beginning, Bezos was not chasing excitement. He was chasing leverage. He chose books as his first product. Not because he loved books the most, but because books offered something powerful. Millions of titles, standardized products, and massive unmet demand. Amazon didn't begin as a grand vision to dominate the world. It began as a small online bookstore, run out of a garage. Bezos personally packed boxes, answered customer emails, and drove shipments himself. When orders exceeded expectations, he didn't celebrate. He went to Home Depot to buy more tables, because the door desks were no longer enough. This is the part people skip. They see the empire. They forget the floor. They see confidence. They forget doubt. In those early days, Amazon lost money. A lot of it. Critics mocked the company. Analysts called it reckless. Competitors laughed. But Bezos was playing a different game. While others optimized for short-term profit, he optimized for long-term trust. Every decision asked the same question. Will this make the customer's life better, even if it costs us today? Lower prices, faster delivery, relentless reinvestment. Amazon wasn't trying to win quarters. It was trying to win decades, and that philosophy, born in a garage, forged in uncertainty, became the foundation of everything that followed. This was not luck. This was not genius alone. This was the discipline to think longer than anyone else was willing to wait. Part 2. Choosing to lose while others tried to win. By the late 1990s, the internet was no longer a curiosity. It was a gold rush. New companies appeared overnight. Investors threw money at anything with .com in its name. Growth mattered more than logic. Speed mattered more than substance. And from the outside, Amazon looked like just another risky experiment riding the wave. But inside the company, something very different was happening. Jeff Bezos was not chasing excitement. He was building infrastructure. While competitors spent heavily on marketing to inflate stock prices, Amazon poured money into warehouses, logistics, software, and systems no one else wanted to pay for. To Wall Street, this looked like irresponsibility. To Bezos, it was survival. Amazon kept reporting losses, year after year. Journalists questioned the strategy. Analysts openly doubted whether the company would ever turn a profit. Some even gave it a nickname, Amazon.bomb. Bezos listened, but he did not flinch, because he understood a truth that most businesses ignore. You cannot optimize for efficiency before you have earned scale. Every dollar Amazon made was reinvested, not into appearances, not into comfort, but into capacity. More selection, lower prices, faster delivery, and most importantly, customer trust. Bezos wrote annual shareholder letters that would later become legendary. In them, he repeated the same message with almost stubborn consistency. We are willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time. That sentence wasn't public relations. It was a warning. Amazon was not trying to look successful. It was trying to become inevitable. Then came the crash. In 2000, the dot-com bubble burst. Companies that had raised millions vanished in months. Stock prices collapsed. Confidence evaporated. Amazon's stock fell more than 90%. For many founders, this would have been the end. Investors demanded cuts. Employees panicked. The media predicted failure. Inside Amazon, reality became brutal. Cash was scarce. Mistakes were expensive. There was no room for ego. And this is where Bezos revealed his most underrated strength: intellectual honesty. He admitted what wasn't working. He cut projects without mercy. He focused the company on what truly mattered: customer experience, operational excellence, and cash discipline. Amazon didn't survive because it was the biggest. It survived because it was built to endure. While others optimized for valuation, Amazon optimized for resilience. The company negotiated hard with suppliers, reduced unnecessary spending, and extended its financial runway. Bezos personally involved himself in details most CEOs would avoid: margins, fulfillment costs, delivery times. Nothing was beneath attention. And slowly, almost invisibly, Amazon emerged stronger. Competitors were gone. Customers remained. The losses that once looked reckless now revealed their purpose. Those investments, mocked for years, had created a moat. Warehouses no one else owned. Systems no one else had built. Processes refined through pain. Amazon wasn't just alive. It was positioned. This phase of the journey teaches something uncomfortable. Sometimes the smartest strategy looks like failure, until everyone else disappears. Bezos didn't try to win the dot-com era. He tried to outlast it. And in doing so, he proved a lesson that applies far beyond business. The future does not belong to the loudest, the fastest, or the most admired. It belongs to those who can stay standing when the noise fades. Part 3. From a store to a system. Most companies stop growing not because they fail, but because they succeed at the wrong thing. By the early 2000s, Amazon had survived the dot-com collapse. It had customers, it had infrastructure, and for the first time, it had momentum. This was the moment when many founders would relax, polish the brand, protect the core business, avoid unnecessary risk. Jeff Bezos chose the opposite path. He asked a dangerous question. What if Amazon is not a retailer at all? That question quietly changed everything. Bezos understood something subtle but powerful. Retail is a business with limits. Margins are thin. Competition is endless. Growth eventually slows. But systems scale. Amazon had built internal tools to manage inventory, payments, recommendations, and logistics. At first, these tools existed only to support Amazon's own growth. Then Bezos made a counterintuitive decision. What if we let others use them? This idea became the foundation of the platform mindset. Instead of owning everything, Amazon would enable others to build on top of it. The first expression of this thinking was Amazon Marketplace. Third-party sellers, many of them small businesses, were invited to sell their products alongside Amazon's own inventory. To outsiders, this looked insane. Why invite competitors into your own store? Why risk losing control? Why share customer attention? But Bezos saw something others didn't. Every seller increased selection. Every product made the platform more valuable. Every transaction strengthened Amazon's infrastructure. Amazon wasn't giving away power, it was compounding it. The company no longer grew linearly with its own inventory. It grew exponentially with its ecosystem. Then came a decision even fewer people understood. Inside Amazon, engineers had grown frustrated. They were constantly rebuilding the same backend systems: storage, computing, databases. Bezos listened, and instead of fixing the problem quietly, he asked, "If we need this, who else might need it too?" That question gave birth to Amazon Web Services. At the time, the idea was almost laughable. Why would Amazon, an online retailer, sell computing power? Why would companies trust their data to someone else's servers? Bezos had the answer. Because the future belonged to builders. AWS launched quietly. No grand marketing, no dramatic announcement, just tools. Reliable, scalable, and paid for only when used. Developers loved it. Startups no longer needed to buy servers. They could move faster, experiment cheaper, scale instantly. What began as an internal solution became the backbone of the modern internet. Netflix, startups, global enterprises. Many of today's most powerful companies run on infrastructure Amazon built, not to dominate, but to enable. This is the irony most critics missed. Amazon didn't become powerful by hoarding control. It became powerful by creating leverage for others. Behind this transformation was a radical cultural shift. Bezos pushed the company to think in APIs, not departments. Teams were required to communicate through clear interfaces. No exceptions. This forced clarity. It eliminated bureaucracy, and it made Amazon faster as it grew. Something most large companies fail to achieve. The goal was never elegance. It was scalability. Retailers sell products, platforms sell possibilities. By turning Amazon into a system others could build upon, Bezos unlocked growth that no single company could achieve alone. And in doing so, he revealed a deeper principle. The most valuable businesses don't just solve problems. They create environments where others can solve problems too. Part 4. The customer above everything. Most companies claim to care about customers. Very few build their entire identity around them. Inside Amazon, there is a ritual that confuses visitors. In meetings, an empty chair is often placed at the table. That chair represents the customer, not symbolically, literally. Jeff Bezos insisted that every major decision include the customer's perspective, even when it was inconvenient, expensive, or unpopular. Because in Bezos's mind, customers were not an audience. They were the reason the company existed. This belief shaped Amazon in ways outsiders often misunderstood. Amazon prioritized lower prices even when it hurt margins. It invested obsessively in faster delivery even when it crushed profits. It offered refunds, replacements, and returns with minimal friction, even when abuse was inevitable. Critics called it wasteful. Investors complained about delayed profitability. Bezos accepted the criticism because he understood something most leaders forget. Customers are loyal to experience, not to companies. And experience is built in details most balance sheets ignore. Take one-click purchasing. On the surface, it seems like a small convenience. One less step. One less form. But psychologically, it removed friction at the most critical moment, the moment of decision. It wasn't designed to increase revenue in a quarter. It was designed to change behavior permanently. Or consider Amazon Prime. Free shipping sounded like a loss. A subscription fee that barely covered logistics seemed irrational. But Prime wasn't about shipping. It was about commitment. Once customers joined Prime, Amazon became the default. Not because it was always the cheapest, but because it was the easiest. This is the quiet power of customer obsession. You stop competing on features. You start competing on habit. Bezos often said that Amazon was customer-obsessed, not competitor-obsessed. That distinction mattered. Competitors react. Customers reveal. By listening obsessively, reviews, complaints, data, behavior, Amazon learned faster than anyone else. And when customers changed, Amazon changed with them. This obsession also influenced how Amazon treated innovation. Failure was tolerated, as long as it served the customer. The Kindle lost money at first. Echo devices were mocked. New services launched imperfectly. But Bezos viewed experiments as tuition. If an idea failed but taught the company something about customers, it was worth the cost. Internally, this created a culture that favored boldness over safety. Not recklessness, but calculated courage. Employees were encouraged to think long-term, to make decisions that might look bad in a spreadsheet today, but create trust tomorrow. Of course, this philosophy came with tension. Working at Amazon was demanding. Expectations were high. Standards were unforgiving. Bezos believed that respecting customers meant respecting excellence. And excellence required pressure. Not everyone agreed, and not everyone stayed. But those who did understood the trade-off. Amazon was not designed to be comfortable. It was designed to be great. The deeper lesson here is uncomfortable but essential. If you truly put the customer first, you will disappoint almost everyone else at some point. Investors, employees, partners. But over time, customers reward consistency. They return. They trust. They build habits, and habits are stronger than marketing. Part 5. High standards, hard truths, and long-term leadership. Leadership is often misunderstood. Many believe it is about charisma. Others think it is about authority. Some confuse it with popularity. Jeff Bezos believed none of those mattered. Inside Amazon, leadership meant one thing above all: raising the standard, again and again. Bezos was obsessed with standards, not vague aspirations, but specific, measurable expectations. He often said that high standards are teachable, but only if leaders are willing to be deeply involved. That belief shaped how Amazon operated at every level. One of the most unusual leadership practices Bezos introduced was the 6-page narrative memo. No slides, no bullet points, no presentations designed to entertain. Meetings began in silence. Executives read the memo together, carefully, slowly. Why? Because writing forces clarity. Slides can hide weak thinking behind design. Writing exposes logic, assumptions, and gaps. Bezos wanted leaders who could think deeply, not just speak confidently. This practice slowed meetings, but improved decisions. And it revealed another core belief: good process produces good outcomes over time. Bezos also rejected the idea that leadership was about being easy to work with. He valued truth over comfort. Feedback at Amazon was direct. Expectations were explicit. Mediocrity was confronted, not avoided. This created a reputation. Some called Amazon's culture intense. Others called it unforgiving. Bezos accepted both descriptions because his goal was not harmony. It was performance at scale. He believed that culture is not what you say. It is what you tolerate. If leaders lowered standards to avoid conflict, the culture would decay quietly. So standards were reinforced constantly. Hiring decisions were meticulous. Promotion required excellence. Bar raisers, independent interviewers, had veto power. Why make hiring harder than necessary? Because mistakes at scale multiply. One poor hire in a small team is manageable. One poor hire in a fast-growing company is contagious. Bezos also emphasized long-term thinking in leadership. He discouraged decisions optimized for short-term praise. Annual goals mattered, but decades mattered more. Leaders were trained to think in flywheels, not milestones. Small improvements, repeated relentlessly, compounding quietly. This mindset protected Amazon from the traps that destroy many successful companies: complacency, bureaucracy, fear of change. Bezos reminded leaders that day one thinking was essential. Day one meant curiosity, speed, experimentation. Day two meant stagnation, followed by irrelevance, then decline. And day two, he warned, was always closer than it appeared. This philosophy demanded something rare from leaders: humility, the willingness to admit when you are wrong, the discipline to change course early, the courage to invest before certainty. Bezos didn't ask leaders to be perfect. He asked them to be rigorous, to learn quickly, to correct decisively, to keep standards high even when success tempted them to relax. The result was a culture that produced discomfort, but also excellence. Amazon didn't become great by accident. It became great by design. Part 6. Failure as fuel, not a verdict. Most companies fear failure. They hide it. They minimize it. They punish it quietly. Jeff Bezos did the opposite. Inside Amazon, failure was not a scandal. It was data. Bezos believed something deeply countercultural. If you're not failing, You're not inventing enough. This idea sounds inspiring until you experience its cost. Because experimentation is expensive. It wastes time. It creates embarrassment. And sometimes it produces very public mistakes. Amazon made many of them. Some were small. Others were impossible to ignore. The most famous was the Fire Phone. Amazon invested heavily. The device launched with ambition and confidence. And it failed, spectacularly. Sales were weak. Reviews were harsh. Inventory was written off. To many observers, this was proof that Amazon had finally overreached. But Bezos never apologized for the attempt. Because the Fire Phone wasn't built to win the smartphone market. It was built to teach. From that failure came lessons about voice interaction, hardware integration, and ecosystem control. Those lessons would later power one of Amazon's most successful products, Echo. When Echo first appeared, people laughed. Talking to a cylinder in your living room felt awkward, unnecessary, strange. But Amazon had learned something others hadn't. New behaviors feel unnatural until they become normal. Echo didn't explode overnight. It improved quietly, iteration by iteration, update by update, until voice assistants became part of daily life. This pattern repeated again and again. The Kindle lost money for years, but it redefined reading. Amazon Fresh struggled early. So did Prime Video. Some ideas took far longer than expected. Others never worked at all. Bezos accepted this as symmetry. He understood that in invention, outcomes are not evenly distributed. Most experiments fail. A few succeed, and one or two successes can pay for hundreds of failures. This is why Amazon was willing to place bold bets. Not reckless bets, but informed ones. Bezos distinguished between two types of decisions. Type 1 decisions are irreversible. They require careful deliberation. Type 2 decisions are reversible. They should be made quickly. Most companies treat all decisions like Type 1. Amazon treated most innovation like Type 2. This allowed speed, it allowed learning, and it allowed recovery. Failure didn't threaten Amazon's identity. Avoiding risk did. And here lies a deeper lesson. Stability is not the opposite of risk. Stagnation is. Amazon remained resilient precisely because it kept moving. It didn't wait for certainty. It built certainty through action. This mindset protected the company from disruption. While others defended existing models, Amazon questioned its own success. Could we do this better? Could this be faster? Could this be cheaper? And when the answer was unclear, Amazon experimented, even at the cost of short-term embarrassment. Bezos once said that big winners require big bets, and big bets require tolerance for visible failure. Not everyone is comfortable with that price, but that discomfort is exactly what keeps most companies small. Part 7. Scale, Power, and the Weight of Responsibility. Success changes the rules. What once felt like freedom slowly becomes scrutiny. What once felt like innovation begins to feel like power. As Amazon expanded across continents, industries, and daily life, it entered a new phase. One Jeff Bezos knew would be unavoidable. Scale attracts attention, and attention brings responsibility. Amazon was no longer just a retailer. It was infrastructure. Millions of sellers depended on it. Entire logistics networks moved to its rhythm. Governments began to ask questions. Was Amazon too powerful? Did it treat workers fairly? Was it harming small businesses? Could one company shape so much of the economy? Bezos did not dismiss these questions, but he also did not retreat. He believed that scale itself was not the enemy. irresponsible scale was. Amazon's strategy at this stage was subtle. Keep building value faster than criticism could erode trust. This meant massive investment in logistics, same-day delivery, last-mile innovation, automation, not to dominate, but to meet rising expectations. Because Bezos understood a hard truth. Once customers experience better, they never accept worse. With scale came regulation. Bezos appeared before lawmakers. Amazon published detailed reports. Policies evolved. But internally, Bezos held the line on core principles: customer obsession, long-term thinking, high standards. Even when criticism was loud, even when pressure was intense. Amazon's leadership believed that the best defense against scrutiny was execution. Treat customers well, deliver value consistently, create opportunities for sellers and developers. If Amazon failed, it would fail by falling behind customer expectations, not by slowing down to avoid criticism. This mindset also influenced how Amazon thought about power. Bezos rejected the idea of static dominance. He believed power had to be re-earned every day. That complacency, not competition, was the real threat. So Amazon continued to invest aggressively in sustainability, in renewable energy, in workforce training. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but with the awareness that scale magnifies everything, both strengths and weaknesses. This phase of Amazon's journey is often the most misunderstood. People see size and assume arrogance. They see influence and assume intention. But Bezos knew something quieter. The moment a company believes it has arrived, it has already begun to decay. Scale was not a destination. It was a test. And surviving that test required humility at size, one of the rarest traits in business. Part 8. Knowing when to let go. Building something from nothing is hard. Knowing when to step aside may be even harder. After more than 2 decades leading Amazon, Jeff Bezos made a decision that surprised many, but made perfect sense to those who understood his thinking. In 2021, he stepped down as CEO. Not because Amazon was weak, not because growth was slowing, but because the company had reached a stage where a different kind of leadership was required. Bezos believed that founders are not meant to do everything forever. Their real job is to build systems that outlast them. So he handed the role to Andy Jassy, the leader who had built Amazon Web Services from the ground up. This choice was not symbolic. It was strategic. AWS represented Amazon's future-facing mindset: infrastructure, scale, and long-term value creation. By choosing Jassy, Bezos signaled something important. Amazon was not a reflection of one man's personality. It was a machine designed to keep learning. Bezos didn't disappear. He shifted focus. As executive chairman, he concentrated on long-term initiatives, big ideas, and exploration. The same instincts that had guided him from the very beginning. Projects like space exploration through Blue Origin were not distractions. They were extensions of his philosophy. Think longer, bet bigger, accept uncertainty. But the real legacy Bezos left behind was not a title, a fortune, or even a company. It was a way of thinking. Amazon's culture, customer obsession, long-term focus, willingness to be misunderstood, was no longer dependent on its founder's presence. That is the ultimate test of leadership. Anyone can start something. Few can build something that thrives without them. When Bezos stepped away, Amazon did not collapse. It continued, which is exactly the point. This final phase completes the journey, from a garage to a global system. from a man with an idea to an organization with momentum. And the deeper lesson becomes clear. Building from nothing is not about brilliance. It is about patience. It is about standards. It is about choosing the long road. When shortcuts promise faster applause. Jeff Bezos didn't build Amazon by predicting the future perfectly. He built it by preparing for many futures and creating a company flexible enough to survive them all. And that is why Amazon was never really about books, or retail, or technology. It was about compounding good decisions, quietly, relentlessly, over time. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think differently about success, patience, and long-term vision, consider subscribing to the channel. These stories are not about idols. They are about ideas you can carry into your own life. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next journey, because every great outcome begins the same way Amazon did, with one clear decision: to start before you feel ready.